Okay, welcome. We have Helen Butler speaking, and we are so excited to have her join us. I'm going to give a introduction, and then we decided to have questions at the end. You can ask your questions at the end of the presentation. And you can also put your questions in the chat throughout the presentation. So you don't have to try and remember your question. So feel free to put it in the chat, and then at the end, I can ask those questions that you asked. All right. So Helen Butler is an educator artist who has worked for decades in community-based, repertory, regional, and non-traditional theater. Originally from New York, she has had the opportunity to work with dedicated theater arts professionals in many parts of the country. She holds degrees from Hampton University and Brandeis University in theater. She has lived up and down the Eastern Seaboard and currently resides along the Chicago North Shore. In more recent years, she has been exploring the complementary movements of self-reflection and community engagement through fiber, crafts, and theater, respectively. Her fiber pieces invite a release from the emotional bonds of modern living, while her engagement theater practice seeks to strengthen community ties by exploring narrative through audience participation. She has authored 2 publications on her art making practice. And so, oops, I just lost my screen. Okay, Helen, please start.
Well, first of all, I want to say what a joyous group this is. You all are totally delightful. So thank you for the invitation to join you. And please forgive me because I'm going to do a PowerPoint presentation. I'm really a horrible extemporaneous speaker. So I always have to script everything. And then if I've got a picture going along with it, I'm doing good. So that's what I'm going to do is sort of share my little process here with you. And because we know that all of us have many stories, this is only one version of my story, okay? And so today I decided to entitle it, Who Are We? And how the arts inform self and community, since I worked a lot in community. I did not set out to be an artist. The first thing I dreamt of was joining the chorus line of the Rockettes at Radio City Music Hall. I wanted to be a Rockette. And then I briefly courted the idea of becoming a nun. And then I wanted to be a pathologist. And then an advertising psychologist, but in the end, I fell in love with theater. So my formative years were spent in the backwoods of Pennsylvania. And so these are Google Map versions of exactly actually where I grew up. It's like you could go on Google Maps and find where you were, but you'll notice it's all woods. It's not suburban, it's woods. Aside from my parents, I had little reference points to my Black heritage. My brothers and I rode 10 miles to Elk Lake Community School, elementary school, where we unwittingly integrated it. I'll leave that to your imagination in terms of what that experience was like. And so one evening, my parents piled us into the Buick station wagon, and we were off to see the drive-in movies to see Song of the South. I am so sure that my parents were blindsided by the Disney version of slavery, but I only remember one scene, and that was seared into my young adolescent mind. And it was the scene with Brer Rabbit and Tar Baby. And to my mind, that Black image was trying to represent and portray me, a young Black girl without identity. And this was my first remembrance of resistance. And I distinctively remember saying, that's not me. So we left the backwoods of Pennsylvania and we went to a small segregated town in Florida. And I have to give homage to those African-American teachers and administrators who helped me form my identity, for which I am eternally grateful. First, there was Mrs. Fisher, the guidance counselor, who saw me going down the wrong road and steered me in the right direction. Then there was Mr. Flowers, the student teacher who put me in my first play because I had not acquired a Southern accent. I didn't have the Southern drawl. I talked proper. And so I ended up being in a play. And then finally, there was the Dean of Girls, whose name I don't even remember, but she carried herself with such dignity and poise that I chose my undergraduate school based solely on her demeanor. And so the point, I guess, that I want to say is that we do rub off on each other. We do make a difference to each other. And so these are some of my earliest beginnings of hero and shero worship. And because racism deprives a portion of humanity of the opportunity to cultivate and express the full range of their capability and give meaning and a meaningful and flourishing life, to live a meaningful and flourishing life. There's a long history of those who have emphasized the need for the arts to address and balance these inequities. I learned from my earliest heroes and sheroes that I was someone who could help others succeed, that I could be someone who sees individuals' hidden gems, that I could be someone who was dignified and noble from these early examples. So this whole idea of developing agency through an independent investigation. So we're on this quest of finding who and what we are. It's an independent investigation of truth. And so from the earliest times, art making has been identified as an identity forming practice. Alan Locke, this is a picture of him, who was called the Dean of the Harlem Renaissance, coined the phrase, an Africanist approach that emphasized the future of Black drama that depended on the use of the folk play. And he said that Negro drama must grow in its own soil and cultivate its own intrinsic elements. Only in this way can it become truly organic and cease being a rootless derivative. And so Locke actually is back in the 20s and 30s that we're talking about in terms of the Harlem Renaissance. But it's really fascinating to me is how that played over into even probably to today. So there are actually roots in terms of African American art forms. So along those lines, I want to introduce a few of my heroes and sheroes of more current time period. So my first shero was Viney Burroughs. And Viney is now 95 years old. This is the most recent piece that I've seen of her. She came to my undergraduate school, and she did a performance of Black theater using Black poetry. And she lit up the stage with her one-woman show using African-American performance style. And it's like, I saw her and I go, I want to do that. So here is our opportunity. And so you notice that we've kind of been setting up some little practices here. So we're going to practice using African-American performance style, okay? So here's what I'd like for you to do, even though you're muted. One of the qualities of African-American performance style is the use of rhythm, right? So if you'll notice this line in this poem by Robert Hayden, Pretty Melinda, dance with me. It has a rhythm to it. Pretty Melinda, dance with me. Pretty Melinda, dance with me. And so I'm going to ask you all to do that particular rhythm. I'm going to read the first part of the poem, and then you all are going to join in, and I don't have to hear you, but I can see you. Pretty Melinda, dance with me, using that method or that rhythm. Are you ready?
Helen, would it be okay if we unmute and do this?
We can unmute and I can stop screen sharing also. Let me do it that way too. Stop screen sharing. We'll do galley view, and then okay. This is the rhythm. But then wait, I got to go back and get my piece.
Okay. All right. So you can all hit gallery view if you have that choice, so we could see each other.
I can see you. Okay. So, are you all ready? Here we go. Mm-hmm. I'm going to read the first lines, and then you all are going to do the Pretty Melinda, dance with me. Pretty Melinda, dance. And you can repeat it twice, okay? Okay. And here we go. Drifting night in the Georgia pines, coonskin drum and jubilee banjo. Pretty Melinda,
dance with me. Pretty Melinda, dance with me.
Night is a juba, night is a conga. Pretty Melinda,
dance with me.
Pretty Melinda, dance with me. Pretty Melinda.
Night is an African juju man, weaving a wish and a weariness together to make two wings or fly away home. Do you remember Africa? My grand, he flew back to Africa, just spread his arms and flew away home. Here we go again. Drifting night in the windy pines, night is a laughing, night is a longing.
Pretty Melinda, dance with me. Pretty Melinda, dance with me.
Night is a morning juju man, weaving a wish and a weariness together to make two wings. Oh, fly away home. Fly away. Well, thank you.
That was fun.
My husband's going, what are you doing?
All right, go back to mute. And so in my early theater years, I said that I was doing community, I've said that I've done community-based theater. So one of the, to me, geniuses that I met was a gentleman by the name of Ernie McClintock. Can you all hear me? Am I on still?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so Ernie's theory was, and this was right after the Civil Rights Movement, there was a Black arts movement that occurred in New York. And Ernie's principle was that an actor should be more than a shell, a body, a voice that moves around and talks without a mind, without a point of view, or without concern for the proper projection of lifestyles. To me, that's a really important key. A self-determined actor can activate social change by exposing the audience to the Black experience without stereotypical representation. And so this whole idea of, again, independently investigating, this experience was presented by a number of writers, Alice Childress, Ed Bullins, N.R. Davidson, Sonia Sanchez, Ozzie Davis. And so even within the African-American community, what we're talking about is this whole idea of unity and diversity. There is not just one African-American experience. There is a wide diversity of experiences within the context of the African-American experience. And so in 2003, my hero, Ernie, passed away, and I was left without a form and or format for expression. His approach to theater was quite unique, and so going to other theater formats really didn't work for me. And how to express this unity and diversity. And I can also say that somewhere in that time period, I also came to know the Baha'i faith. And the Baha'i faith also talks about this whole idea of unity in diversity. And so what I began to do was to marry the two. So this was one of my earlier quilts. It is a picture of Ernie, the gentleman sort of in the center of the quilt with his arms folded. That was kind of his stance. And the gentleman who's on the white box in the center of the room was a blues artist by the name of Guy Davis. And Ernie would bring together all of his students, and we would listen to the experiences of these other African Americans who were using whatever their art form. And so Ernie's principle was that a Black actor is one who is aware of his identity, has respect for his art form, and processes a true regard for the diversity of the Black experience. And I want to say that the Black artist is one who is aware of her identity, has respect for her art form, and processes a true regard for the diversity of the Black experience. Then we are obviously into quilt making. So this is a piece, it's down at the bottom. This is a piece actually from my own experience in terms of working with one of my friends who has Lola Louise Creative and Performing Arts Studio in the Bronx. And
Helen?
Yes.
I just want, sorry to interrupt you. I think, are you using a PowerPoint presentation right now?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Can you go back to screen sharing? Because we haven't seen your slides.
Oops, sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Oops. So you've just been seeing me? I'm so sorry.
Well, it's been wonderful. I thought you didn't have a slideshow at that point, so I didn't.
No, where do we? Good grief. Okay, let's do a real quick little. Okay, so this is a picture of Ernie. Yeah, okay, got it. We're there. So this is a picture of Ernie and his principles. An actor should be more than a shell. And let's see, here we go. This whole idea of unity and diversity, which was just that. And here, yeah, we kind of missed the picture of Alan Locke and Viney Burroughs, but you can actually do just a Google search and you can find those two individuals. So here we go to the quilts themselves. This is a picture of, again, of Ernie having this gathering, sort of the salon, you know, it's like in the tradition of the salon, where you bring together all of these young, enthusiastic, eager artists or would-be artists, and they are exposed sort of probably the same principle as the Art League does, but on just as an individual. So this is this is one of those early quilts that kind of depicts that for me. This is, again, Miss Lola Louise Creative and Performing Arts Studio. This was an experience I had actually doing a performance with this group, where she is from Trinidad and she brings native Trinidadian students to the art center and actually exposes them to values and virtues. And so the little icons here are what's presented here. It's Miss Lola Louise, lyrical litanies, led the children through the mysteries of the virtues. What better way to teach about love, honor, and respect? While the costumer lurked with boots and bits of inconsistencies. Just a little playful quilt to talk about that experience of working with these delightful youth, and to honor my friend who is with little or no funding other than, you know, what the parents pay, to instill these values into children and youth. So this is the piece that's actually in back of me, and it was written in response to the piece that we just did, the Daedalus Fly Away by Robert Hayden. This whole idea of the African Americans having to steal away to practice their drumming, to practice their dances in the dark of the night, and the wishfulness of being able to fly back home, and the remembrance of home. This piece, again, I mentioned that the Baha'i faith has impacted, especially more recently, has impacted by art making. And so in 2000, in the mid 2000s, the New York Times had an article that said 250,000 children in sub-Saharan Africa subsist on a bowl of rice a day. I was so distraught by the imagery, and the quilt has the essence of what that imagery was, of this young 7, 8, or 9-year-old actually mining for diamonds, conflict diamonds. And I wrote to the New York Times and saying, you can't do this without, you know, you can't tell us this without giving us something to do, you know, and there was no agency. There was no sense of agency that I could engage with. And so I made a quilt. And then I found this quote that actually did resonate tremendously in terms of quelling, you know, the emotions that one has about some of the injustices that exist. And so it says, to gather jewels have I come to this world. If one speck of a jewel lie hid in a stone, and that stone be beyond the 7 seas, until I have found and secured that jewel, my hand shall not stay from its search. And so therein lay the balance for me in terms of so much of the injustices. There is a God that is greater than the injustices. It doesn't mean that we don't have to do our part, but yeah, there is still hope, because otherwise some of what we see could be very hopeless. This is a piece called Pupil of the Eye, and it means student of the self. And so this was an icon that I actually developed for myself, and it appears in a number of my pieces, where it's this invitation to actually meditate and to go inside and to look within, to find both solace, to find reassurance, and to know that we are not alone, and that there is a support, a spiritual support for us. Let's see. This is a piece, it's called Communing with the Ancestors. There are a lot of storytellers that I know. People, for some reason, like sharing their stories with me. This was a particular story of African-American men who had gathered for a spiritual retreat. And at one point they were, you know, just praising. And when it was over with, one of the men said to one of the other men, he said, I think I saw my grandfather. And one of the other people said, I saw mine too. And so it is this idea that the veil between this world and the next may not be as thick as we think it is, that there is this capacity to actually ask for help and to receive help and to receive guidance. And that was part of their experience. And it was told to me in a story. And this is a piece, again, in the Baha'i faith, the people of African descent are regarded as the pupil of the eye as in the iris. And I personally, I don't necessarily know what that means, but if in fact there was anyone who represented that, it would have been Nelson Mandela. And so in this particular piece, what I've done is I've used a silk screening process to have a larger face. And then within that face is the image of the younger Nelson Mandela and the older Nelson Mandela. And he, to me, represented, as this quote says, "Thou art even as the pupil of the eye, the wellspring of the light. For God's love has cast its rays upon thine inmost being, and thou hast turned thy face towards the kingdom of thy Lord." And Nelson Mandela, it seems to me, did represent that turning his face towards his Lord. This is a piece, you'll notice it has the pupil of the eye, and it's, what I find is this particular piece, I've done this in a number of different, somebody mentioned batiks. I love batiks. And so these are batik, I've done this in a number of different versions of batiks, and it always is a light and a dark with the pupil of the eye icon in the center of the eye. And I call this piece attunement. It resonates with some people very strongly, or it doesn't resonate at all. And I'm fine with that. But yeah, let's see. And so this whole idea, again, I'm wrapping up here, I'm moving to the closure. The whole idea is this idea of the oneness of humanity, right? And so I've circled back around to theater, of all things. And as I've circled back around to theater, one of the things I've been creating most recently has been this idea of what I call engagement theater, where you actually have the audience be a part of the theater performance. We've done it with The Great Migration, and we've done it with this whole idea of not being fearful during this time in a piece called The Quest for Light. And this is the Quest for Light. Again, what I've been told is that this time period that we're living in is very special. And art gives us a way to respond to this time period. The writings of the Baha'i Faith say that how many blessed souls have longed for this radiant century, their utmost hopes and desires centered upon the happiness and joy of one such day as this. God has favored you in this century and has specialized you for the realization of its blessings. So each one of us has something very important to contribute to this time period. And rather than have people sit and watch a play, they are actually an integral part of the piece itself. And again, this piece is called The Quest for Light. And this one was done in an art gallery in Atlanta, Georgia. And I think that is it. Woo!
Thank you so much. That was amazing. Put a lot of effort into that. I appreciate your acting and your prose and your art and your quilting and your ebullient light. So I see you. Oh,
I was just going to say, it's been a fun journey. I mean, one of the things that one notices is that by age has its bounties, as so that you can spend, one age working on just one type of art form, and then you can switch. And I've noticed that with artists in particular, there's really no there's nothing that says you only have to do one thing. I kind of had to grapple with that for a minute, and I don't have to be an expert at it. I'm really sharing because I mean, in terms of quilters can probably look at my items and, oh, the stitching is not, it doesn't have the precise stitching. It doesn't have, or other folks may look at it and the proportions is not laid out. It's, it's like by certain standards. But what's fascinating to me is that there are a number of different aesthetics that are rising to the top, that are a different kind of aesthetic in terms of how do we come together? How do we join one another in community? So.
Mm-hmm.
Helen,
I imagine in that process that you also come together within yourself too and become more whole.
Yeah.
Helen, I loved the depth of definition for each of your quilts. I thought that was just very meaningful to see all the meaning that you put into the pieces.
Thank you.
So have you made any of your own fabrics?
I've kind of been, I kind of didn't do that because that was too much work. Although I'm more and more, I'm moving into that. I completed a mask recently. And so I've taken like a couple of dyeing classes, and I've taken a class with a woman who does like ink acrylics, like ink with liquid acrylics, right? Not liquid acrylics, but ink, acrylic inks. And so I've been painting on like canvasy kinds of materials to see what is different that I can actually, so I've just kind of playing around with a little bit of dyeing, a little bit of batiking. I haven't gone full-fledged though, because I still have too many fabrics I gotta use up.
Also,
I answer the question.
Okay, one more, sorry. Bossy pants here. So did you have felt on one of them? It looked like there was felt.
It is felted. The one with the ancestors. Okay, so it's like part of it is I want to experiment. What is this? What is this felting thing? And you prick your fingers as you're doing felting. So yeah, the Community with the Ancestors one is a felted piece that's on top of a quilted background. So yes, yeah.
Helen, you have such a rich background and have lived so many places. I'm just so curious, how did you end up here? Or why?
Okay, first of all, I'm old.
We all are.
Which is really delightful. I'm old. I came here to work at the Baha'i National Center here in Evanston. And so I worked there for I worked there for about 10 years. And then now I'm sort of on my own and playing around with how I can do service that I want to do, not that's necessarily dictated by the needs of an organization. So, but that's how I got to the Midwest.
Okay, thank you.
Sue Carr has a question. Go ahead, Sue.
I do. Helen, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about people for whom you are a mentor. We heard, those who affected you, but maybe someone that you have something to share about what's coming next.
I don't know for whom I am a mentor. There are two experiences that I had that were stellar experiences for me. One was as part of living on the Eastern Seaboard. I was in Atlanta for a couple of years and I worked at Spelman College. And one of the programs at Spelman College was to assist welfare recipients to go into the workforce. And so we used acting as a method to assist. So I'm really interested in applied theater, not get up and whatever. So to me, that was one of those instances. And again, I taught acting. I'm I don't know who I'm mentoring, because sometimes when I offer stuff to people, they go, no, I don't want that. Yeah, no.
Well, as a teacher, it might be 40 years before you find out, but those people will come to you and they will let you know what message you sent to them. And it's interesting. I think a lot of teachers have had that experience.
Mm. Well, I haven't stopped long enough yet for anybody to catch up with me. So
True.
I look forward to that.
Well, I'm going to tune in and listen to some Guy Davis music. And Ossie Davis, his dad?
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
I like blues, so I'm going to be looking it up.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
How long have you been with the Baha'i faith?
Since 1990. And I can say that actually Ernie, the acting instructor, was actually instrumental in my connecting with Baha'is in Atlanta, Georgia, where there's such a huge diversity of African Americans. It's like they're highly educated African Americans, and then very poor, people who just came from the farm African Americans, and just the diversity of expressions was just exquisite for me and to me. So that was my grounding point for the Baha'i faith. So yeah. But Baha'is are all over the world, so
yes,
I can go anywhere.
Right.
Helen, I was thinking about your comment about pupil of the eye and wondering what that meant. And so the pupil is the black part of the eye. And so, I mean, maybe it was just that literal, just, the reflection of the black people.
It's really interesting because someone has actually has done a little bit of research about what the pupil is. So the pupil is actually hollow, and it is a reflector of, I guess, what happens in the back of the eye, and so it actually even turns orange, and so it's a light. It allows light to come through, and so I know that as the Baha'i community, because it's what we're after is this unity and removal of prejudice. And the unity and the oneness of all humanity. But what's really fascinating is that African Americans have a specific role to play within that context. And so all of us, especially in this time period, as we think about what's happened over the last year or so, in this time period, it's like, what is our role? What is what is it that we can offer? And one of the things is we're also told is that the arts are an entry point that, I want to say the arts are an entry point through the heart rather than just through the head. So there is a huge capacity, I think, that we have for bringing the arts to community and using the arts to actually fortify our togetherness or to strengthen our oneness. So that was a long explanation, and I don't even know if it answered what you were asking, Dawn, but yeah.
It was good.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Any questions about process, or because I don't know what my process is. I get an idea, and you'll notice that I primarily work with batiks, and that was intentional because I was starting to look at all of the different fabrics that exist. I kind of like the idea that batiks, even though I don't know what the working situations are, but batiks in particular have somebody's hand on them. They're not made with machine printing. And so if you look at a batik fabric, it has all of these different textures and nuances to it that printed fabrics don't necessarily have. It's a tighter weaved fabric, and I really like that part about it. I just love the fact that somebody else's hand has been on the fabric before my hand has been on it. So.
We have a long tradition here at the Art Museum of a fabric guild. It was started many years ago and featured a lot of batik. And Manya Fan was the leader of that, and our education center is named after her. And we recently inherited from the Fabric Guild for our league all of the wooden chops and the metal ones. And so we did sell them. And it's kind of interesting how the world goes around, Helen. One of the people that came to our sale was a young man who's in leather work, beautiful handmade leather. And he's presented to our group this year. He did come and bought chops and got some wax. He taught himself how to do leather batik and is now selling these beautiful purses and things online. And this is his hobby art. He works at Purdue full time in another line, but it's just so interesting that so much of what came back this year was the impression, the wax, you know, and taking that off and what's left. And it kind of reminds you of how this year has been. You know, you put some down, you lose some, you may be washed away. But it's very, very fun for me to think about the batik and the Fabric Guild. And I hope someday you'll come down and visit us here in Lafayette and see our museum and our town. And we have an art scene going on, so it'd be fun to have you come visit.
Yay, we'd love to. We'd totally love to. Yeah.
I was going to say, even long before Manya Fan, there was Lifsha Alper. And I don't know if anybody remembers her. And Manya and I, we were in Lifsha's classes, and that was the early 70s and mid 70s, 80s. The Fabric Guild had a show. We had a fashion show. We had, we tried all the different dyes. We mixed ourselves, and it was fascinating. All the batik, I still have some hanging in my closet.
Also Millie Breen.
Millie Breen was very,
some of us took batik from Millie Breen. She was just such a leader in the community in terms of art.
Right.
It's wonderful to remember those people.
It is. Yeah, it's fun. As I was saying earlier in my breakout, when I came to town, I didn't know anybody. And my first impulse was I go to the art museum, the art center then. And I took every class there was, starting, with pottery and batiking and drawing and weaving, and just, I absorbed everything so quickly. And still got my little loom, still got my batiks, keeps going. So it's interesting. Thank you.
That's interesting. How many of you have a batik in your home? How many of you have a batik in your home of any kind?
All over the place.
I sold all mine at the Art League garage sale.
I know, and that gentleman who bought that very large one was just awestruck.
I still have chuntings and chaps and all those tools too. So and wax, beeswax.
We may have to break that out. Go to Trudy's garden and sketch and get some batik ideas.
I remember doing one in elementary school or maybe middle school, but I'd like to learn how to do that. That sounds like fun.
The wonderful thing about batik is you're so free. because that wax is dripping and you got to move your hand. And, you know, it's just such a liberating art.
Yeah.
You can't stand there and wonder what you're going to do. You're doing it, you know. It's fun.
Helen, are any of your quilts for sale? And how would we buy it?
So the attunement pieces, I do make those. And actually I have a price list. I don't post it on my website, but if people are interested in just seeing the price list, I can send that out to folks. There are a number of different things that I do make. I make, actually I make dolls. They're sort of that same icon that I have that looks inside. I have a beaded dolls that I hand make with boutiques, and I sell those. So the things that I sell are really not the quilts. I find smaller means for making, you know, things that I actually can make on some level or another, because I don't quote unquote manufacture. So I make dolls, I make, many of you, if anybody sews here, you probably have done like the coil baskets. I make coil baskets. And again, I make that attunement pieces, the one with the two eyes. I make those that I sell. And actually I make prayer rugs. And that's kind of been one of the more recent requests that I've had are tailor-made prayer rugs, where the client will tell me what kind of fabric they want. And thank you, there's my website in the chat. And so it's really just about emailing me, because I kind of really like having personal relationships with folks so that I can actually give them what they want as opposed to what I'm selling, you know, kind of thing. So yes, thank you, Dawn.
And you have 2 books too, right?
I do. So one of my books is a portfolio, and it is listed on Blurb. And so one can just order it off of Blurb. And that particular booklet has, it has the diamonds quilt in it. It has a couple of other quilts that I've made that have a story to them. So you kind of notice that story really is like my grounding point. And so the Blurb book has the story in it, or stories of that go with my quilts. It's called Call and Response. No, it's called Response, and that's on Blurb Books. And then the other one is called Mirror Bright. And Mirror Bright is about that last slide that we saw in terms of that theater process, where it really does invite community into using principles that reinforce community, and you do a performance piece based on creating your own theater piece, your own applied theater piece. So those are the 2 pieces that I have. And again, if you go to my website, it'll link you directly to those 2 books. And there's an article on my website. Recently, I was, my quilts were included in Elixir Journal. There are a couple of Elixir magazines. This one's called Elixir Journal. And again, the link is on the website. And so it has some of the quilts that you've seen here, as well as some that you haven't seen, so.
Thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Any other questions?
Not a question, just what a joy it's been to spend time and listen to you. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's really been my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Before we end, can I take a screenshot of all of us? No, nobody wants that.
Okay, I got my smile on.
Isabel, can you turn your video on? perhaps. No pressure, Isabel. Okay, so I'm gonna count down from 3 and we'll take the picture. So everybody look at your camera and not the screen, okay? Look at your camera. All right, 3, 2, 1. Wait, oh my gosh, I did it again. Okay, sorry, one more time. Okay, 3, 2, 1. There we go. I always do that. Okay, well, thank you so much, Helen. We really appreciate your fabulous presentation. It was educational and joyous, to use your word. And we have a gift, a small monetary gift that we will send you. And please feel free to check in with us again. And we'd love to have you as a member. I know we're kind of far away, but we welcome you as a member. And please stay in contact. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This really was a joy. Thank you.
All right. And so there's just announcements for our next upcoming meetings. And Grace, did you have anything that you wanted to say?
I just wanted to remind people about the Museum Heart of Art. That's their big annual fundraiser. And this year it's going to be a virtual event. It's April 9th, a Friday night. It will be 1 hour. But if you go to the museum website, you can purchase a ticket, $125, and that would serve a couple at home. You could listen to the music, bid on auction items, have a great time in front of your computer. You don't have to get dressed up in formal wear and drive anywhere and eat nice and pretty with folks. You just do it right at home. So please consider purchasing a ticket for the better of the museum. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Okay. And we have a pop-up event. We're very pleased to announce that Becky Brody will be leading us through a watercolor class.
Oh,
and it's
great.
An introductory one, very basic. You don't have to have any experience or supplies. And it's March 31st. It's a Wednesday at 1 p.m. And we are selling kits that have the supplies. So there's a brush and there are 4 greeting cards to paint on.
And it is a Zoom class.
It's on Zoom. Yeah. And then there's a tin of watercolor paints, 16 colors. So you can purchase that, and it's all in a bag. It's $18, and Chris has very generously offered to pass them out, so you can go to her house and pick them up. You don't have to buy the kit if you have the supplies, or whatever you want to. If you want to paint on your wall, I guess you can do that too. So that's coming up. And we have our very own Inga Marish speaking on April 13th at 11:30 about her father's artwork. He was a Native American and artist, and she's reviewing his life's work. So, and that's on Zoom also. Anybody else have anything they want to say? Sue?
I have a question. Mm-hmm. And I should have asked maybe when Andrea was on. When is the museum going to open? Anybody know?
I do know that Kendall sent a message this morning that he thinks in September we can continue as we have in the past, having our luncheons in the Shook Gallery, and that there would be receptions, opening reception, the food that we provide. So September. Now, I don't know anything prior.
Okay. Well, I know that cultural things and can open, and I just was wondering if they were about ready. And so, okay, good.
Well, the new artist, the student show, is planned to be virtual this year. We didn't know how to plan otherwise, so it will be a virtual show. And the awards presentation will be Tuesday night, April 20th at 7 p.m., the way it's scheduled right now. So that'll be something you can just log on to, and then hopefully the show will be up for about a month, but it's going to be all virtual, and it's all virtual submission. We don't know how the teachers and the art students have been able to function with some of this school is on and school is off. And so we've got a bunch of awards that we'd like to give out, and we hope we get a number of quality pieces that students have participated in. There is a new category, COVID and Me. We don't know if anyone will have any artwork in that category, but we thought we'll put it out there, and if there's something they want to express, this is their opportunity. So as the Art League recognizes and encourages those student artists, I hope that you all will be able to visit the show when it's up.
Trudy, do you want to talk about your tickets? Unmute.
The Symphony Guild has their fundraiser going now, and I have the tickets. Several of the Art League, Symphony Guild members, sorry, are selling tickets also. They're $5 tickets. They're good on any merchandise at Bennett's Greenhouse from now until May 31st. They're not good anymore later, unless they let us, sometimes they let us expand another week, depending on the weather. But you have to have your tickets in your pocket if you want to use them. So anytime is a good time. I'll be sending them to you, or you can pick them up. Sue always has them too. I always will have them with me wherever I go. So just talk to me. My information, I have also flyers that I've been leaving places. So if you see any of these gold flyers, all the information is on there. There's also, Bennett's will do curb pickup. If you call them 24 hours before you need your things, you can pay with the tickets and the extra cash, put it in an envelope and call them when you're sitting in a parking lot, and they will bring it out, your merchandise. But I know most of us want to pick out our own pretty flowers, so. Thank you.
Thank you, Trudy.
That's good.
Great, it was great to see everybody. So we will formally end our meeting, and feel free to hang out and talk though. Okay, thanks everybody for coming.
Thank
you
for
Thank
doing
you.
this.
Thank you so much. That was fun.
Bye.
It was fun. It was great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Anybody need tickets? I'll take your names.
Trudy, I'd like you to send me a